Hello, I'm Kent Myers.
I'm Mick Cornett, and it's time for The Verdict. As a part of its traditional and continuing commitment to public and community service, Crowe and Dunleavy Law Firm presents The Verdict, an objective discussion of contemporary legal issues hosted by Kent Myers. And also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma. And welcome to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett. We are back to discuss another topical issue. And as always, let me introduce one of Oklahoma's top legal experts and my co-host, Kent Myers. Kent, today a topic that's been grabbing the headlines. You've titled today's show, The Criminal Justice System, Have the Wheels Come Off?
Yes, that's a common expression for something that's broken, something that's not working right. Just day after day, we are continuing to get, kind of like waves up on the shore, new and scary, confidence-shaking revelations about our criminal justice system. Our criminal justice system has 3 or 4 parts we're going to talk about today with our guests, but let's look at a graphic that kind of illustrates it, I think. We're going to be talking about the criminal justice system and the failures in the investigator's side, the FBI or the police. We're going to be talking about failures in the prosecution side. We're going to be talking about failures and dangers in the scientist side, the forensic scientists, the DNA experts. And then finally, we're going to be talking about problems with defense attorneys. Mick, all of these things have to work right, just like we saw on that wagon, in order for Lady Justice to be able to go forward and do her job. And when one of those wheels comes off, things don't get going, they don't work right. And that's what we're talking about today.
It seems to a lot of people, I think, that the justice system seems to tend to favor the accused as opposed to the victims. How did that all start?
Well, remember our Bill of Rights. Remember our constitutional framers. They came most from England, where they had been oppressed for religious reasons, for caste system reasons. And they wanted to make sure that when they came to this new country, that didn't happen to them here. And as a result, many of our protections are built in to protect the defendant, because at the time the framers did this, they were the potential defendants, or they were the previous defendants in England. So it's not surprising that that's where the protections are, but when you consider the disparity in resources between what's available to the prosecution on one side and the defense on the other, these protections are absolutely necessary.
And the whole thing's evolved to where we are today.
It's evolved, it's supposed to work, and there's a serious question about whether it's working.
All right. Well, it's an interesting topic, the criminal justice system. Have the wheels come off? I would expect another lively discussion. We'll get started right here on The Verdict.
It's got to be around here somewhere.
Don't worry, we'll find it. Just calm down.
I swear it was right here on the desk.
All right, if I were a will, where would I be?
It's the only copy. Without it, we're out $3 million.
I know.
Hey, accidents happen. If a condom breaks
Or you have unprotected sex.
You have 72 hours to reduce
your risk of getting pregnant. It's called emergency contraception.
Got questions?
Call Planned Parenthood.
All children deserve a life of hope and love. But sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all of the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. Oklahoma Lawyers for Children has over 350 of the best attorneys and volunteers in Oklahoma County who donate their time and services to represent children. For more information, call 405-23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and today our topic is really a question in itself, the criminal justice system. Have the wheels come off?
Yes, and we've got the two mechanics here with us, if in fact the wheels have come off. We've got two great guests that I want to introduce now. To my left is a repeat participant on The Verdict, Attorney General Drew Edmonson.
Good morning.
Glad to have you, Drew. Drew is a head of a very large law firm in Oklahoma. His Attorney General's office has 82 lawyers that he has to supervise. As you may remember, Drew is a University of Tulsa graduate, College of Law over there. He's been the Attorney General for 7 years. He has made a career in law enforcement, and he's Oklahoma's top law enforcement officer. Drew, welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be here.
On my right is Bob Ravitz, the Oklahoma County Public Defender. Bob is likewise the head of a large law firm. He has 38 lawyers in his Oklahoma County Public Defender's office. Bob is an Oklahoma City University graduate from 1976, and Bob is a recipient of the Clarence Darrow Award as being named the Oklahoma's Outstanding Criminal Defense Lawyer. Bob's been involved in probably more capital cases hands-on than anybody in the state of Oklahoma. Bob's been involved in approximately 75 capital cases in the course of his career, and I want to personally say that I've seen Bob try a case with my daughter Pam, who's also a public defender, a capital case, and I watched Bob try a capital case in Oklahoma County District Court. He is not only a truly outstanding administrator, he is a very effective trial lawyer. So these two guests can tell us what we want to know about our subject today. But let me start with Drew. Drew, let me review some recent history with you. Let's look at a graphic. The first one I want to look at is the FBI director admits error. We have an obligation in the FBI to produce, in this case, every single one of these records, and we failed in that. Louis Freeh talking about the McVeigh case and the failure of the FBI to turn over documents. Let's look at one more graphic out of Time magazine, When the Evidence Lies, talking about Joyce Gilchrist and her work in the Oklahoma City Police Crime Lab. It just happens, as Mick and I were discussing at the beginning, it seems like it's daily. We're hearing new revelations about these things that continue to shake the public's confidence. Drew, have the wheels come off?
I don't think they've come completely off. They may be wobbling a little bit. I don't think there's any question that we have some serious problems and that they need to be addressed, but I still think it'd be healthy to put it in perspective. You know, the problems that we have are in cases that still reflect an extremely small percent of the total number of cases that are processed. Still today, most innocent suspects are cleared during the investigative stage of a prosecution. Most people who are guilty are convicted. Most people who are innocent and go to trial are acquitted. But even saying that, it is abhorrent to all of us that someone who was actually innocent might be convicted, sentenced to imprisonment, or subjected to a potential death penalty. So as good as the system may be overall, these are glaring examples that we can never cease trying to improve it.
Well, what can we do to improve the effectiveness of the investigator, the police, the FBI, or on the other hand, the scientist?
Well, the FBI will have to speak for itself.
Yeah.
I think the snafu in not getting all the records turned over had more to do with simple records management than anything malevolent, and it certainly wasn't forensic. But as far as our own system is concerned, we have made improvements. Most of the cases where we're discovering these terrible things have happened are 12, 15 years old, back when there wasn't a capital defense team available in all 77 counties, back when we didn't have reciprocal discovery and experts on the part of the defense who could do their own testing and make sure that the state's forensic chemists are telling the truth. We've made monumental strides in the last 15 years in our criminal justice system, and more needs to be done.
Bob, what do you think?
I think we need to change the mentality of a lot of individuals. I think the end result in the criminal justice system is that the jury needs to decide based on evidence. And we as a system have to realize that an individual is innocent until proven guilty. And that goes for the police officer, that goes for the forensic chemist, that goes for the prosecutor. All three of those individuals need to realize that a mistake can be made, that we can't hide police reports, that we can't fail to give over police reports, that we can't have duplicate police reports, one for the police officers and ones that we turn over to the defense.
You've seen those? You've seen that?
Yes, there have been instances where that's happened. Recently, a case in Tulsa County, the prosecutor was not given a DNA report, and the judge 2 days ago vacated a rape conviction because there was DNA evidence saying that there was no semen found on the victim. To me, this is an example of people running amok, people going way too far in their strive to put somebody away, not to seek justice.
Well, let me ask you, is this just started? Or we're just now hearing about it nationwide?
I agree with Drew that a lot of good prosecutors turn over every piece of evidence every time. They'll let the jury decide. But there are a group of police officers, there are some prosecutors, that the end justifies the means. I believe this person is guilty, hence I'm going to do what it takes to convict this person. That's not the way the system was set up, Ken.
Well, Drew, what steps can we take to tighten these things up, just in Oklahoma?
Well, we've done some very good things, both legislatively and policy-wise, to try to tighten up this system. On our own in the Attorney General's office, we started over a year and a half ago reviewing every death penalty case to determine whether additional forensic tests would resolve any outstanding issue of guilt or innocence. And if we found a case where guilt or innocence was still at issue, where the defendant had never admitted that he was the perpetrator, continues to deny it, and a forensic test would answer the question for us, we've facilitated those forensic tests without a court order. We simply agree with the defense that testing is appropriate. And then last year, the legislature provided to the Oklahoma Indigent Defense System money so it could do the same thing, and the authority to go in a suspect case and have a test done, and if it showed actual innocence, then they would have access to the courts.
All right, let's hold that thought right there. We got to interrupt, get us to a short break. You're watching The Verdict. Mick Cornett, Kent Myers, Bob Ravitz, and Drew Edmonson. We'll be right back.
Yeah, campfire's a lot of fun. You get to make some friends. You get to do some cool stuff. Campfire's for boys too, not just girls. But hey, campfire's definitely for kids. So call the campfire office nearest you to join in on the fun. 'Cause let's face it, you're not getting any younger.
St. Gregory's University has been changing the lives of people like me for 125 years. Affordable private Catholic education, balanced with dedication to community and service, makes St. Gregory special. We're extremely proud of our students' outstanding academic achievements and our nationally ranked athletic teams. It's when you help a student build a future of balance, integrity, and service that you change a life forever. St. Gregory's, a community for life.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God,
indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Every day Americans make this pledge, but few think about its significance. It's our job to make justice a reality by providing legal representation for all citizens. Legal services, keeping the promise of America.
Every day, in state governments throughout the country, crucial decisions are being made that affect the lives of children and their families. But as this process takes place, children are often left voiceless. When these children raise their hands to be heard, is anyone listening? There are people listening. They are child advocates. Join us and raise your hand for kids.
The title of today's show is The Justice System. Have the wheels come off? Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers and our guest, Attorney General Drew Edmonson and Robert Ravitz. I said the justice system. Actually, we're talking about the criminal justice system. Where to now?
Well, one of the wheels we haven't talked about. A wagon has 4 wheels, and one of the wheels in this criminal justice system is the performance of the defense attorneys. I want to talk to Bob now about some recent history, or perhaps not too recent, but a study done by the Liebman Institute at Columbia University shows us in this graphic that nationwide, according to the Liebman study, 37% of the convictions in death penalty cases are reversed because of incompetent defense counsel. Bob, what do you think about that? That's an awfully high percentage of cases that are getting turned around because the defense lawyers didn't do their job. Is that wheel off?
I think there is a legitimate concern on the part of the system that certain lawyers are taking cases that they are not competent to handle. I think that there are lawyers who think that just because I've tried a couple of drunk driving cases, I can try a capital murder case. And a capital murder case is different than any other case. It involves a punishment stage and a guilt-innocence stage. And I think a lot of lawyers don't realize this and get into the courtroom not taking enough money to handle the case and making serious errors. I think it's a legitimate concern. I think we can hopefully ameliorate that with lectures, people going to seminars, and training for public defenders throughout the state. I think Oklahoma made a real positive step in the early 90s when they set up a statewide indigent defense system for purposes of handling capital trials. Until early 1990, only Oklahoma and Tulsa County had experienced capital litigators.
Let me ask you this, both of you this. A lawyer graduates from law school, gets sworn in as a lawyer, has never practiced law a day in his or her life. There's nothing to prevent them from taking on the capital defense, is there?
Absolutely not.
Well, is that appropriate? Shouldn't there be some minimum qualification?
If they get hired.
If they get hired.
They aren't going to get appointed.
Yeah.
In Oklahoma, they're not going to get appointed anymore.
Get appointed to do it.
Well, so let's say they get hired. Is there something wrong with that? Shouldn't there be some additional qualifications necessary to handle a capital case?
I think Bob and I absolutely agree on this. There needs to be, in the indigent system, there have been since the early 1990s. As a former prosecutor, you know, my worst day was when someone was on the other side of the table who didn't quite know what they were doing. It demeans the process. It makes us work harder because we're trying to cover his bases for the record as well as do our own job. And it should not be allowed to happen. The one that just got reversed, Bigler Joe Stouffer, on incompetence of counsel, was a 1985 case before the new system. And we're going to see some more of those, I expect.
Well, in a Stouffer case, though, the lawyer was in fact hired by Mr. Stouffer. I mean, and how do you stop an individual from hiring who they want to hire? I think that maybe we ought to come up with a system that a defendant has explained it that if you hire somebody, you may not be able to make this particular claim, or at least have a public defender or somebody experienced explain to the defendant all of the ramifications of the representation of the individual. I don't know, it's a tough system.
Maybe the trial judge ought to make a record the same way that the judge does if the person wants to represent himself. You know, where the judge says, you know, I don't recommend this. The people you've retained do not have experience. I want a knowing and voluntary statement on your part that you're doing this on purpose.
I think that's a serious concern. I think I've always had the concerns. I saw a lawyer take a capital murder case for $500 and tell the family members of the victim that of the defendant that they'd fly him in from Illinois to hear the trial itself. You can't do that for $500. But he was trying to get publicity. That's why he took the case. And we can't have people like that within the criminal justice system. And we need to stop that. We need to, if lawyers are doing that, they need to no longer be lawyers, in my opinion.
Let's talk about a different subject. Let's talk about crime lab or scientific evidence. I would suggest that DNA and other types of scientific evidence is a lot more important today, or at least is used more widely, than it was 25 years ago. And we have crime labs. We have the FBI crime lab that several years ago at least was in chaos. We have the Oklahoma City Police Department crime lab that at least is being criticized. I don't purport to know whether there are any problems there or not, but there's some publicity about it. What should we do, Drew, about tightening up on crime labs, since they're so important now both to the prosecution and the defense?
Well, the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab is on the verge of national accreditation. As of today, no crime lab in Oklahoma is accredited. It's a process that you go through of evaluations and upgrades. Not Tulsa, not Oklahoma City, not OSBI today is accredited. OSBI is on the verge of being accredited. The legislature may consider requiring that of any crime lab, providing they give them the resources that they need to do the upgrades and what needs to be done to become accredited. Until that happens, then our best safeguard is making sure that the defense has the resources to do counter-testing and access to the evidence.
I'd like to stop right there and give us a chance to sum up. Could you sum up what you think on this whole subject, Bob?
I think crime labs can't be advocates. They've got to be neutral parties advocating the evidence, looking at the evidence, making a determination of what is right, not an arm of the state, not an arm of the defense. I think until we come up with that type of system, we've got a real problem with regards to crime labs. As it relates to the system, we've got to be more concerned that every little error is considered harmless error by the courts, and that's not the case. The jury ultimately decides, and until such time as we allow the juries to decide, and we have true independence in the criminal justice system, and we don't sit there and say that an error is harmless, that Joyce Gilchrist's testimony was harmless error. Until the courts are willing to say it's error, we're going to reverse this case, we're going to still see these type of problems. And we got to understand, it's better that 10 guilty people go free than one innocent person be convicted. Anybody's son or brother could have been Jeffrey Pierce. And jurors have got to understand that.
Drew?
Well, I would prefer that no innocent people be convicted and no guilty go free. In a perfect system, that's what we ought to work for. I don't think I've agreed with anything Bob said today. We need to do a lot more work. It takes good people at the controls to make sure that the reforms that are necessary get done. But I would go back to what I said at the outset. We need to keep our eye on the fact that by and large the system works well. The times when it doesn't are unacceptable, and we need to fix them.
Mr. Edmonson, thank you. Mr. Ravitz, thanks for coming in. Kent and I'll be back to wrap it up right after this. You're watching The Verdict.
In Oklahoma, there are more than 1,600 children waiting to be adopted. They're of all ages, and for many, home has been a source of pain and conflict. They've dreamed of finding a better life and a loving family. Consider adoption. For more information, call 1-877-OK-SWIFT or visit the website www.okdhs.org. Adopt. It may be the toughest job you'll ever love.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities, parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. How are we going to wrap this one up in a few seconds?
Well, it's a very serious thing we've been talking about today. Martin Luther King maybe said it best when he said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." We see so many little examples of injustice that maybe it adds up to some real significant injustices everywhere. We really have to be concerned about the public perception. A public that is satisfied that the justice system we have, the criminal justice system that we have, is fair and is being administered fairly, is going to be comfortable in what's happening in their communities. I think most people believe that the system is fair. I think they have serious concerns that it's being administered fairly on all sides.
All right. Well, see you next week.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks again to our guest, Oklahoma Attorney General Drew Edmonson and Public Defender Robert Ravitz. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next time on The Verdict. This program was brought to you by Crow and Dunlevy, a professional corporation. And also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma.